Well, it's time for the third in our series of ongoing conversations, and today it's Andrew Tabor, who is our assistant warden. Andrew, hi there.
Hi, Mark.
How are you getting on in these COVID times?
Well, living in the countryside, it's actually a lot easier than living in the middle of a city. Lockdown was not really the difficult time that a lot of other people have encountered.
Okay, so let's just talk about your role as assistant warden, because I'm being a bit cheeky here, but I'm just wondering how many people actually know the structure of the Honourable Company and where you fit as assistant warden. What does that mean exactly?
Well, we have three officers and a warden emeritus as well. So we have the warden at the top of the tree. I suppose I'm sort of halfway up the tree as assistant warden, and then we have the junior warden, who's Julie Kent, at, I wouldn't say the bottom, but very important, very important part of the tree as well.
Not to her, anyway.
Not to her, definitely not. And we're all part of court. So the warden chairs court, and effectively for 2 years or 1 year, depending on how he or the court wants it to run, will do either 2 or 1 year in post.
So you'll take over at some stage when Chris Gaskell either decides he's had enough or we've had enough of him. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think probably the former rather than the latter, because he's doing a fantastic job.
I'm sure you're right there. Maybe later on we can talk about your role with the community support group, but perhaps we can turn the clock back to early days and your sort of Gloucestershire connections. Have you always lived around here?
No, I was an army brat, actually. I think that's the way of describing it. I followed the flag. I followed my father around the world. To Berlin, Washington, Paris. He was very much on the attaché circuit at one stage. We lived in Hampshire in those days. And when he retired from the army, we moved to Gloucestershire in about 1977. So I've been on and off since 1977, but of course, I was at university and then I was in the army, so not living full time in the county. That really didn't happen until about 2001.
But it's home now, presumably your own family has grown up here?
Oh, very much so. We have a 19-year-old son, Piers, who has started his a course at Exeter University, reading international relations. I think it's a little bit different to what he expected, but I think he's having a good time nonetheless.
Yeah, good. And staying safe, I'm sure.
So far, so good, yes.
So, so you travelled quite extensively. That must have been fascinating, actually. I mean, maybe in your teenage years, where were you? Where was your father based then? Where were you living, so to speak, before you went to university and stuff?
Mainly Washington and more to the point, Paris. So my father was defence attaché in Paris. So we had a little flat in Paris, and also had a cottage outside a lovely place called Chantilly, where there's rather a nice chateau, but unfortunately that wasn't our abode. So I played quite a lot of golf. There's a rather good golf course there. Unfortunately, my golf has lapsed, or perhaps fortunately. A long walk spoiled, as it's called. So that is, I suppose, my main memory of travelling around is Paris, and that was later teens, really.
And maybe that helped in a way with your choice of subject at university.
Yes, I think I'm a frustrated historian at heart. I did read French and German at university. I made a real error, I think, in my choice of A-level subjects. German and French was a choice I was always going to make. But my brother had done history, and I decided to be different in inverted commas and do economics. The economics side of it I didn't find wildly exciting, although the politics side of it I did. So, as I say, frustrated historian, and perhaps I should have read history at university if I'd done the A-level to back it up.
I mean, is history a subject, an area that you take an interest in now as an adult?
Very much so, specifically military history. There's an awful lot of that to read about. So I suppose my military career and the military history side run alongside each other. But no, far more extensive than just military history. No, I love it, and in fact, Lou also loves it, and I think we try to inculcate that in peers. He did history up to A level, and he's now doing international relations. So,
well, and I would think at this time, you know, in the way the world is going, international relations is a subject that he may get some very interesting benefits from going forward.
I think so. I mean, he's intending to join the army. So I think it has a read across to that as well. I think it's quite important to know why you're going to a certain part of the world if you do get sent there.
When you went to Oxford, Andrew, was it always part of the plan that you would then go into Sandhurst after Oxford, or was that something that came along perhaps whilst you were there?
It's something that came along while I was there. I toyed with the idea of joining the Foreign Office. And I suspect I probably wouldn't have got in to the Foreign Office, but who knows. But actually my opinions changed, and I decided I wanted to join the army while I was there. So about a year in, having joined the Officer Training Corps, I thought the army was for me. Yeah,
and then you went to Sandhurst, and how long was the Sandhurst posting, so to speak?
Well, my Sandhurst course, I almost shudder to think of it, was only 4 months long in those days. Yeah. It didn't seem to do me any harm. Some of my soldiers might say differently, but so I did 4 months. The course there is now a year. Yes. And it should be a year as well. There's an awful lot to learn, and cramming it into 4 months wasn't the best idea, but frankly, at the end of 4 months, we were ready to go.
And excuse me for a slightly personal question, were you always an Andrew, or were you an Andy in the army?
I've always been an Andrew. I've also been called XTC, because we all had nicknames when I arrived, and someone said I looked like the lead singer of XTC, which I didn't. I haven't seen the likeness at all, but it stuck.
Okay, only to a very select crew. And what about at school? Did you have a nickname at school? Can you remember? Or
probably
is it broadcastable?
Tabby Tabor, probably.
Oh, Tabby Tabor. Okay. So let's turn back the clock there again. So you left Sandhurst. Which regiment did you go into, and what did you do whilst you were with them?
Well, I joined the 15th, 19th, the King's Royal Hussars, which were a North Eastern regiment based in Newcastle, Durham. Very, very good Geordie regiment in inverted commas, because obviously Geordies are a specific area. When joined the regiment in Germany, it was a reconnaissance regiment in those days. After a few years, we converted to tanks, and then my regiment amalgamated in 1992 as part of the big amalgamations in 92, and we amalgamated with the 13th, 18th Royal Hussars to form, rather than adding it all up, to form the Light Dragoons, which people actually can understand slightly better than the vulgar fractions, as what our regiments were called.
And are you still in contact with people? I mean, the army is very good at looking after its personnel, isn't it? And sort of reunions and that sort of stuff. Is that a fairly active part of your social life?
I mean, I go to the regimental dinner once a year. It's not taking place this year, not surprisingly, along with lots of other things. And I keep a keen interest on what the regiment's doing. I was thinking, I think they're about to send a squadron to Mali at the end of the year, which will be an interesting job. Yeah. Yes, I keep in contact with quite a few of my friends from the regiment.
Fine. And so that all came to an end. Did you meet Lou during that period, or did she come along after your army service? Or
I met Lou when I was working in the Ministry of Defence.
Right.
So in '91, having been to the Staff College, I went to the Ministry of Defence as an officer working for the Adjutant General, who was the number 2 in the army, effectively head of personnel. So worked there for a couple of years, and halfway through I met Lou, followed her to India, and got engaged and got married in '93. So it was all quite quick.
Yeah, good for you. But you remained in the army for what, another nearly 10 years, I think it was?
Nearly 10 years. So I left in 2001.
Yeah.
And I finished up actually instructing at the Joint Services Staff College at Shrivenham, as it was then.
Yeah. So that was a handy. I mean, and so did you leave the army from Shrivenham then, as such?
I left from Shrivenham, which was actually very convenient because I then decided I needed some retraining, so went off to the Royal Agricultural College, as it was in those days, now universified, so I did the 1-year farming course there just to sort of give myself an idea of what I was taking on.
Okay, so give us a sort of a thumbnail sketch of the farm and your what you do now, so to speak.
Well, it's a mixed farm, mainly arable. That's the main side of it. The grass we let to a local shepherd, yes, I mean it's a mixed farm. That doesn't take me all my time, and it has allowed me to give time to charities and the Honourable Company, amongst other things. And I'm also a magistrate alongside.
And that takes up quite a lot of time, doesn't it? I mean, what prompted the decision to apply for being a magistrate?
I was sitting on a riverbank, and I had been thinking about it before. And I go fishing with Jamie, my cousin, and I just I said to him, what about what would you think if I said I wanted to be a magistrate? And he said, go for it. So I did. I mean, the criminal justice system has been something that I've always been interested in. And at the time, I didn't have all that many connections to local charities apart from military ones. So I wanted to do something for the community, for the local community. And so I joined the magistracy, and I have not regretted it at all.
Yes. And is there any, are you sort of what I would describe as sort of a general JP, or do you have any particular interest in any of the other, the family court, for instance, or is it just sort of the main justice just dealt out in Cheltenham?
Good bit of adult crime. That's all I deal with. Yes. So not a youth magistrate. Toyed with the idea of doing that. So I'm a presiding justice in the adult crime court. Yeah.
Fine. Now, I understand as well, Andrew, that one of the things that you're particularly passionate about is this idea, which I think it was yours, which were the mock trials. Tell us about how what they are and how they came about.
I wish it had been my idea, because it's a fantastic one. The primary schools mock trial competition, it was very much a Gloucestershire initiative, and was started up, and unfortunately his name escapes me at the moment, but it was started up in Stroud some years ago now. And basically people thought that the senior schools mock trial competition wasn't really working as well. So we started mock trials in Stroud, in Cirencester, in Gloucester, in Cheltenham, and in Culford at the time. And the mock trial competitions still go on. Now, I took the Cheltenham mock trial competition on after about a year. I sat on the committee for the first year and then took it on thereafter. And it's basically to give children in the primary schools an idea of how the criminal justice system works. Yes. And so they take on the roles of particular people involved in a trial, so the advocates, the magistrates, the witnesses, the defendant, the victim, and act against another school with a script which is there to help them, but shouldn't just be entirely relied upon. And it's been very successful. The schools seem to be very enthusiastic about it. In fact, I had a record number of schools for last June's one, but which of course didn't take place. Regrettably.
But it's something that hopefully will come back, and I would agree with you. It's important that our young children get some idea of the world, what the world is like, and I suspect that ties in maybe with your work. That sadly there are kids out there who don't understand where potatoes come from, or what a cow is. It's part of the broader sense of education, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. And also it has the advantage that it gives children confidence to stand up and talk on their feet. It's terribly, terribly important in so many different ways. And it has been very successful. And thank goodness there are a whole load of magistrates who are willing to give their time, and retired magistrates who give their time to run these competitions.
And you also took on another role, admittedly only for a year, but I suspect it was a massive honour, which is when you became High Sheriff. I mean, was that a surprise? How does that, did you get a phone call one day saying, hello, Andrew, would you like to be High Sheriff? I'm sure it's much more complicated than that, but was that a surprise to you?
It came completely out of the blue. I was at a dinner party. Well, I mean, there's no secret. Duncan Clegg,
oh yes,
who was one of our members, nominated me for High Sheriff, and he invited me to dinner. Invited us to dinner, having seen me operating in the mock trial competition.
Okay.
So we invariably invite the High Sheriff to the mock trial competition. So he came along. Then he invited us to dinner. And while I was sitting warming my backside on his bum warmer, he suddenly dropped the question. And, well, I very nearly fell backwards. Yes, it was just a complete surprise and a huge honour.
Yeah. And, I mean, I'm sure you've got loads of memories, and we sadly haven't got time to go into all of them, but are there any particular ones that come to mind about those 12 months?
There were so many highlights. I think one of the highlights for me was attending remembrance service in HMP Ashfield, which is near Papelchurch. A whole load of ex-servicemen there, and it just had an added poignancy to it all. Seeing they organised the whole service themselves, and it was extraordinarily moving. Good.
And finally, because the clock is beating us, I'm afraid, that sort of wraps up nicely with your role as the chairman of the community support group, which I'm hoping you'll tell me is all about the community.
Very much so. I mean, we are there not necessarily to give money. I mean, the charitable trust can give money to community groups, to charities and community groups. We are there really to give advice where asked for. One of our main projects at the moment is the mentoring project in conjunction with the Cranfield Trust, where we provide mentoring from the Honourable Company's members to charity leaders. We had the pilot project, and some of it is still running, and this is about to be expanded in conjunction with the Community Foundation as well, to help other charities. And of course, some charities are in a pretty parlous state at the moment, and need all the help they can get, and not just financial.
Of course. And if any members are interested in being part of that, can they get in touch?
Absolutely. We're very willing to take more volunteers. As we are expanding it, we do need more volunteers. So yes, please get in contact with me by phone or by email, or even by the written word. I don't mind how you get in contact. It'd be lovely to have as many mentors as possible.
Okay. A letter, what's that? Yeah,
well, quite.
Andrew, on that note, thank you so much for your time today. It's lovely to catch up, and good luck with everything you do.
Well, thanks so much, Mark. It's been a pleasure.